Today we're going to do a complete run through of my MRT chassis mount canopy setup that I've been fitting out and thoroughly testing over the past 8 months. Hey guys, and welcome to a video I've been promising you for quite some time now, but with something like this, I like to thoroughly get to know it first and really put it through its paces before sharing my thoughts and opinions, because canopy setups like these aren't cheap, so I want to make sure I'm giving you guys the best information possible to help you make the right decision for you. So that's exactly what I've been doing for the past 8 months or so, from fully decking it out, mostly myself here in the garage, to using it on a bunch of trips all around Australia. During that time, there's been things I like, things I dislike, and things that have broken as well. And we're gonna run through everything today to hopefully give you guys all the information you need if you're looking at a similar setup. There'll also be some timestamps in that description down below if you wanted to jump ahead to a particular section. But for now, let's start with a general overview of this setup so you know exactly what we're reviewing. So this is my MRT X Series chassis mount canopy setup with a couple of extras added which we'll run through in just a second. And I've got it fitted to my 2022 dual cab Isuzu D-Max. It's 1650 long, which I reckon is the perfect length for dual cab utes if you're wanting to run rear accessories like this jerry can holder and the spare wheel, for example, because any longer and you sort of increase the risk of bending your chassis by having too much of that weight behind that rear axle. However, if you're not wanting to run those rear accessories, then 1800 is probably going to be the better length for you, and it's going to give you a ton more internal space. Width-wise, this is 1800 wide, which is spot on for the D-Max, and it means I can still use my factory side mirrors and get tons of visibility behind the car, and most of the time I can still open both of my canopy doors, even in car parks with cars on both sides. As for the height, it measures in at 930 millimeters tall from where that door closes in there to the roof of the canopy. And interestingly, that's actually a fair bit taller than my last setup, which was 860. But because this one's chassis mounted, it still measures in at the exact same overall height, because I don't obviously have the tray and whatnot underneath. And with this, I get a ton more internal space. These canopies come fully powder coated inside and outside from factory, and MRT's got a few different color options you can choose from. And they've also just started doing two-tone colors as well, which looks really, really cool, especially for white vehicles, because you can have white doors on a black canopy. Actually, go and check out Camping Down Under's Hilux build if you want to see exactly what that looks like. For me, I've gone for their black GV8, which is essentially just a flat black matte look, which I reckon looks pretty awesome, but I know some people are a little bit concerned when it comes to black canopies because of the heat, which is definitely a valid concern. For us, we've never found it to be too much of a problem because I have fully insulated this particular canopy setup, which makes a fair bit of a difference. And also having this full coverage rooftop tent, it definitely helps as well because it's stopping the sun from actually hitting that canopy roof. Now, I mentioned earlier that my setup has a few extras, and I thought it might just be worth listing these quickly now so you kind of get an idea on what's standard and what's not standard. And number one, the first extra is what MRT calls their premium convenience system, and that includes LED strip lighting inside the canopy and the full keyless entry system that comes fully wired to your battery. On the back, I've added a spare wheel carrier, a fold-down ladder in the center, a lockable jerry can holder on the right, and an undertray drawer. The tail lights have been upgraded to the LED 355 version, and on the sides, it's got vehicle-specific underbody toolboxes that also have keyless entry. Now, I figured the best way to tackle this video is going to be by running through the entire setup section by section to let you know what we like, what we dislike, what's been working for us, what hasn't been working for us, what's broken, and everything in between. So let's jump into it. Starting with the outside, you'll notice that instead of whale tails or T-locks, these canopies just have one central latch right in the middle that works similar to a car door handle and makes it so easy to open these canopies. With a simple pull just like that. The whole locking mechanism itself is hidden within this paneling just here, and because the locks actually kind of activate on the edges of that strip. There's no need for any grooves or cutouts in the canopy floor. And to close it down, it's literally slam shut locking. So we grab the door, push it closed, and it shuts as easy as that, just like your car door. And for the most part, this system has been fantastic. I've now had all three. I've had T-locks, I've had whale tails, and now I've got this system here. And I can tell you this by far is the most convenient and nicest to live with on a daily basis. The only issue I have had with it, and it's super random, but every now and then, one of the two edge latches will kind of think it's closed like that with the canopy door open. And when you try and shut it, it just kind of bashes against the closed latch, and pulling that handle doesn't open it up either. So the only way I found to fix it is to take a trusty screwdriver, poke it into that latch while also pulling the handle, and then you can clip it back into place just like that. And then the canopy closes down as easy as that. This has only happened to me a handful of times in the past 8 months of using this canopy basically every single day, but it was just something I wanted to show you how to fix in case it happens to yours. The doors themselves seal really well, which is actually something I found out the hard way back when I was insulating this canopy setup, because I'd stuck 3mm insulation across the whole canopy door thinking that would be fine. But once I was done, that canopy door wouldn't even close properly. It was just causing those seals to be pushed out just enough that those catches wouldn't grab on. So to be honest, it's a good thing. It means ordinarily those seals are pressing firmly against that canopy body, and I had to go back through and cut away all my excess insulation. Opening it back up, you'll notice that where most canopies have a bit of a lip on the floor here that can make it a bit annoying to mount accessories, these chassis mount canopies have that nice flush floor, which I honestly reckon is one of my favorite features of these canopies for a couple of reasons. Number one, I obviously didn't have to raise any of my accessories to clear that lip, which saved me a bunch of time in the DIY process. Number two, because those accessories aren't raised, we effectively lower the height of our whole fit out by about, I don't know, 4 or 5 centimeters, and that makes our drawers easier to access. It makes these benches at a more convenient height to use, and actually that was a massive one for my partner Bianca, who's a little bit shorter than I am, because she really struggled to use the benches in my previous build. And thirdly, because of that flush floor, we get a much greater internal usable height in the back of the setup, enough in fact to fit this big 130 litre upright Bushman fridge, which is pretty awesome. And for a bit of a comparison, my previous lift-off canopy setup, which was pretty much the same height as this overall, I could only just fit an 85 litre fridge. Moving inside the canopy setup, the floor in here is just solid aluminium paneling with no mounting points, so you will have to install your own solution. For me, I've installed all my different accessories using riv nuts through the floor, which honestly has been working really, really well. One piece of advice I do have if you are planning on using riv nuts though, is don't use aluminium. They're just not up to the task, and I've had a couple of aluminium ones fail in this canopy setup, whereas steel ones never have any dramas. I use these from King Chrome M6 riv nuts. They honestly work so well, and I've never had an issue with one of these. Both doors have built-in LED lighting as part of that premium convenience system, which is honestly so handy, and they give off a nice amount of light too. Not so much that it's going to be blinding around camp, but plenty enough to see what you need to see without using too much from your battery. So I've got my battery monitor hooked up there, and you can see with one light strip running, we're using 0.88 amps. We get two different color options, white and warm white. To be honest, there's not a lot of difference between those two options. I really wish there was a red or an amber color choice there to help against bugs. I have added my own red light inside the canopy setup there, and I reckon I might need to go back and add one to the door as well, because honestly it makes such a difference against bugs. One thing I will mention is that these lights come pre-wired to your vehicle's starter battery under your bonnet, so you can use them straight away when your canopy is fitted. However, now that I've got my own battery installed in the canopy setup, I have rewired these lights to run off that battery instead, just so that I'm not draining my starter battery when I'm out camping. We won't talk too much about the fit out because this video is mainly about the canopy itself, but if you are interested, I do have a full playlist running through the entire build series in a lot of detail, which I'll link in the description down below. Moving down below the canopy, I've got a set of tapered underbody toolboxes, which I've always found to be super useful both in this setup and my previous canopies as well. These ones are actually vehicle specific for my D-Max. You'll notice they fit perfectly on the side of the vehicle there, and they've got some nice angles to really make them look the part. On the front here, you'll notice it's got the same handle as the canopy door, making it super easy to open these, super easy to close them, and they've also got central locking like the rest of the canopy. I store all my recovery gear in on this left-hand side toolbox, so when I use it and it gets all dirty, I don't have to bring it inside the car or inside the canopy. It can kind of stay contained in this dirty box. And in on this right-hand side in my slightly scuffed up toolbox, I've actually permanently mounted my air compressor for quick and easy access, which has honestly been such a convenient thing. And I reckon that should really say something about my faith in how well these toolboxes seal to mount an electrical device in there. And so far so good, it's still working, I think. Yep, still working, but it's only been in for about 3 months, so I suppose time will tell. Stepping around to the rear of the canopy, we find my spare wheel carrier on the left, drop down ladder in the center, and jerry can holder on the right. And I know a lot of people wonder about why I chose this particular arrangement, because normally you'd put your spare wheel on the right hand side to try and off balance a bit of the weight of the kitchen build, which is normally on the left. For me, I chose this arrangement for a couple of reasons. Number one is that my big triple drawer setup is on the right hand side of the canopy that houses all our supplies, tools, and everything in between. We then pile all our camping gear on top of that drawer system, adding yet more weight. So honestly, I reckon this canopy is pretty even weight-wise left to right, if not heavier on the right-hand side. And number two, I was originally planning on swapping out this jerry can holder for a new mount to house both a jerry can and a gas bottle together in the one kind of enclosure. And I do eventually want to mount my hot water system, which requires that gas bottle, in on this right-hand side. So it just made sense to me to keep everything close together. All the gear in the back works really well. It's super handy having this ladder in the middle, and it's so easy to use. There's just some simple clips up the top. Drop it down and it's ready to go. Now obviously we'd get a lot more use out of this ladder if our rooftop tent had rear access, but unfortunately it does not. But we still find we use this ladder all the time for doing things like loading the kayak or some supplies up onto the roof racks. The only thing I will complain about with this ladder is in the center here, there's this plate in the middle that makes it really hard to use this step. I need a shoe to demonstrate. So climbing the ladder, this step here, your shoe just whacks into that plate, making it quite annoying to use. However, apparently this won't be an issue for new MRT canopies, as I've been told they've actually updated their ladder design since mine to give you more room on that step. The jerry can holder here on the right is pretty awesome, and it's lockable too, which I reckon is just fantastic, especially if you're traveling remote, because the last thing you need is someone stealing your fuel or the water that you're relying on. To open it up, there's just a simple catch on the bottom you squeeze and let those hydraulic struts take care of the rest. And the fact that it fully encloses that jerry can when it's closed is a massive upgrade from us, coming from the previous version, which was just an open top model. We actually had a jerry can come flying out when we're driving along the beach, potentially because Bianca didn't see a bit of a dip in that beach, but it's good to know that will never happen with this one. Moving along, the spare wheel holder is, well, the spare wheel holder. I've never had any issues with it, and it's really strong as well. It's got a bunch of internal bracing inside the canopy to add to that strength, as with the rest of these accessories too, for that matter, so I'm very confident it's never going to fall off the back of the vehicle. It's actually essentially sitting on a platform on the base, and then it's screwed to the canopy using those standard studs, so it's essentially got 2 points of anchoring to make it really, really strong. To change a spare, you do have to remove this ladder first, which can be a tiny bit annoying, and it does mean you have to bring along a socket set to undo these 4 bolts to slide that ladder out of the way and then access your spare wheel. Underneath all that, we've got a nice big Undertray drawer, which is really awesome. This thing is super strong, as I shall now demonstrate by sitting on it. There we go. And it's so handy to use this thing as a table because, as you saw, it takes 2 seconds to set up. It's at a nice convenient height for use, and being a nice metal surface, you can put your hot pots and pans straight down without damaging it. Taking a look inside this drawer, we honestly get a ton of storage space because this is a full-length drawer going the whole way to the front of the canopy. However, it is a little bit tough to access stuff down the front section of that drawer because this lid can only be the size that it is, so it clears that ladder on the back of the canopy. It does make it a little bit annoying to access things down the far end of the drawer, but it is something you can sort of work around. So for us, we store things like our snorkeling gear lengthways down the drawer, so you can just kind of reach your hand in and slide out what you need. However, you do still have to clear everything out of the way from the front first. Once again, the drawer has a very similar handle to the rest of the canopy setup, which is especially useful for an Undertray drawer because we do have to reach underneath all these accessories to gain access to that Undertray drawer, so that works really well. And as you just saw, it also features that same slam shut locking. The only issue we've had with this drawer system was on our Gibb River Road trip, doing corrugations after corrugations every single day. We found this drawer was getting harder and harder to actually open, and it turned out that this handle actually wasn't pulling in those end latches enough to actually release the drawer. I mean, it was, but we really had to put some force and kind of rattle it to open it. It was a pretty straightforward fix. We were able to pull these end caps off, and inside there's a small adjustment bolt we were able to tighten to bring those catches in a little bit further. Just something to keep in mind, because if that had gotten much worse for us on the Gibb, it might have actually become stuck shut, and that would have been a much bigger problem. Moving down a bit further, we find these two brackets that MRT installed to house my factory sonar modules. Now, those are the pieces that most modern four-wheel drives have, like the D-Max, to monitor your blind spots while you're driving along. The only issue we've had with these was that one unfortunately snapped off during our trip along the Gibb River Road, which granted is one of the toughest tracks in Australia. MRT quickly replaced that bracket when I got back, and I'm now working with them to get the sonar system fully operational again. Alrighty, moving on to the roof of the canopy. I get a lot of questions about how I've mounted my rooftop tent and other accessories to the canopy roof, and I know I've covered this in other videos, but I thought it was important to touch on here as well. Essentially, it's pretty simple. MRT has just welded 3 extrusion rails widthways along the canopy roof that I can then slide bolts through to mount my accessories wherever I like. This results in a really streamlined mounting system for the tent, because the base that would normally be sitting on some roof racks or a roof platform is now sitting pretty much on the canopy roof. But it did mean I had to pull the tent apart a little bit to do up the nuts on top. This was originally done on my first canopy setup as a bit of a custom edition, I suppose you'd call it, but I'm fairly sure now if you're ordering a canopy setup through MRT, you can also ask for the same system and get it for yours too. One other thing I thought was worth mentioning is related to 12 volts. So because my canopy has that premium convenience system installed with the LED strip lighting and that keyless entry, MRT actually runs a power feed all the way back to your starter battery under the bonnet to power those devices. But what's interesting is they use really thick wire to do so. So they use 6 BNS wiring, which is more than up to the task of running most DC-DC chargers. To tap into that power feed, they've actually built in an Anderson outlet on the bottom of that power inlet panel, so it's as simple as plugging your DC-DC charger in and away you go. I will just also mention though that the actual wiring within that power inlet, so what connects that 6 BNS feed to the Anderson port on the bottom, that's only 8 BNS, so a little bit thinner, but the run is so short that I haven't found it's limited anything for my particular setup. So I suppose the only thing left to touch on is the price, and MRT does list this all on their website, so I'd say that's the best place to go for the most accurate information whenever you're watching this video. But at the time of recording, these setups start at roughly 10K for the base model that suits a dual cab just like mine. With all the accessories mine has, this one is closer to 15K, but do jump on the website. They've got a cool little canopy builder tool where you can add all the accessories you want and get a price for your own unique build. Now, before we wrap up, I want to extend a very special thank you to the channel's latest Explorer tier Patreon member, Wayne. Mate, thank you so much for your support through Patreon. It really means the world to us, and it goes a long way to keeping these videos coming out. I hope this video has answered any questions you guys had about this MRT X Series chassis mount canopy, but if not, you know what to do. Let me know in the comment section down below, or shoot me a message through Instagram and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I'll catch you in the next one.